Hello everyone, and welcome to yet another BokuAkaKuroKen series. I know we had this ship a lot on this channel, but it is my favorite, one of them. And if you want something different, put it in the request form. This one is called Under the Surface, and it started as a Van fanfic and escalated from there. That alone should be a warning for you. But to get a little bit more specific, the warnings for this entire series, are going to be implied past abuse and age regression. It is just implied for the most part, but be aware of it, and if you can't handle that, that's completely fine. You don't have to watch this, you can skip the series in its entirety. Now, if you do want to proceed, let's start with the first part. I hope you enjoy it. Kenma wanted to scream. In his head, he did, loud and desperate until his throat was sore, until he choked on his sobs and tears, but in reality, he just lay on the guest bed in his gaming room. It was dark, only a subtle glint fell into the window. It was quiet, silent. The violent tugging at his heart, a sensation as though something monstrous was clawing at his chest, didn't want to fit into the silence of the night. He tried taking a shuddered breath, yet it felt as though he was underwater. No, the mass enclosing him felt much more tenacious than that, like ink or tear. Like the shadows themselves had turned into a deadly, toxic liquid engulfing him, forcing themselves down his throat. Tendrils of the darkness seemed to stretch from the corners, reaching around his neck and pulling, tightening. No sound escaped his mouth as he struggled to force air in and out of his lungs. Like liquid, ice-cold fire, tears pricked in the corners of his eyes and burned tracks into his skin. Silently, alone, hidden and wrapped in layers of darkness, he waited. The torturous burning spread and prevailed with every breath, every beating of his heart. He sank into the unknown grief and despair that had suddenly taken hold of him. The pain spread from his mind until his whole body was infected, and he was heavy with the emotion, leaving no room for hope or thought. Only, why? Why did he feel like this? Which invisible memory came to haunt him? What caused him to spiral? Was it just a phase to sit out? Would it fade? Why? For a brief moment, he tried to reach within his mind to understand, to find what had driven him into his personal hell, but nothing. Every thought was slow yet frantic, desperate to be heard. It was hard to find clarity under the screams, most his own. Agony filled his mind, taking no coherent shape or form to attack or comprehend, just screams of torment, wailing of abandonment. If he could be honest with himself, if he had the courage to look deeper, he knew what he'd find. More unbearable than any monster he could imagine, something he couldn't fight and win against. He refused to be dragged down. With his last strength, he fought the feeling of helplessness threatening to paralyze him. He couldn't. He wouldn't. He refused to feel like that again. He clung to the pain, searching his memory to inflict more. Controlled pain, things he was rightfully sad about, things he could mourn. The death of the neighborhood cat, the sad scene in a movie he had seen. His boyfriend's faces, if they knew the dark working of his mind, if they'd find him. More tears fell, but the screams changed. They quieted down. It was as though he yelled back, "Here, I listened, I cried, I'm hurting, I'm feeling what you want me to feel." But he wasn't actually mad. Anger had no place in his sorrow-drenched mind. As cathartic as it was to embrace the emotion and cry and feel, it wasn't enough. It never was. On the edge of his consciousness, the helplessness edged closer again. With every minute, his fantasy took darker turns, less happy endings to keep it out, to satisfy the cry within him, begging him to listen. He didn't. He pretended to share its pain, pretended to understand. In truth, he couldn't, even if he wanted to. He didn't know what triggered the bursts of agony on nights like these. He wished he did. He wished he could give the voice the answers it desired as much as he did, but he couldn't. All he wanted was not to feel like that again. Over and over again. It was no good. Before dawn broke, he curled himself around his pillow, his eyes opened wide, but stared into a vast nothingness, invisible to anyone else. His shaking hands found their way up his arms again, trying in vain to soothe him. The screams in his head turned into violent sobs and cries for help. He agreed. He had lost the fight. Again. So he agreed. Nothing but an empty shell for the voice, he silently cried out for help. Its desires became his desires. Its mind replaced his own. He, Kenma, drifted away, like being pulled underwater. If he hadn't been so exhausted by his fight, so lost and disconnected, he was certain his body would have already followed its pleas and cried out. He could feel his lips starting to tremble. His tired eyes bringing forth new tears, and small sniffles made themselves known. The sensation slowly dulled as he drifted away, like a riptide had taken hold of his consciousness. In a way, this was better, easier. He would give in sooner if it wasn't for the helplessness watching over him every time moments before he couldn't hold on anymore. And if he didn't know that sadly this wasn't a dream. A dream coming back from meant meeting the worry of his partners, for the current never took him for long. The moment Bokuto was pulled from his sleep, he knew something was off. He frowned, his eyes not quite opening yet, and pulled his boyfriend closer. But it wasn't Kenma as usual, and earned him a small noise of protest as he pulled Akashi straight from Kuro's arms. He blinked, inspecting the scene skeptically. Kenma was missing. His usual spot left empty next to him. A little heavy with sleep, the ace recalled yesterday's events and where he had seen Kenma last. As usual, he was the first to get tired, but he distinctly remembered asking Kuro about Kenma's whereabouts once the other joined him in bed. The Raven grumpily admitted that Kenma was still editing, but would join them soon, only apparently he didn't. It wasn't the first time Kenma slept separate from them. Sometimes things got too much and he needed the space, but he'd usually warned them in these instances. Perhaps he just fell asleep during his work or was too tired to change rooms. Bokuto knocked softly as he was capable of, on the wooden door, not actually expecting a response considering how early it was. To his surprise, there was one. A quiet sniffle from inside, followed by an unsure no. He froze, confused. He couldn't place the sound, and Kenma's voice sounded unusually meek and small, almost as though he was intimidated, though he couldn't quite assess it. His brows pinched together in concern. Kenma, are you awake? A long pause, then, yes. Again, it sounded quiet, even quieter than usual. A certain insecurity accompanied his words, reminding him of a much younger version of the former setter. Can I come in? No reply. Kitten? Eventually, as the minutes ticked by, he couldn't wait any longer. His own anxiety eating him alive, and carefully pressed the door open. Ken, are you okay? The room was poorly lit. Only the bluish-purple morning light illuminated it from the window that was halfway covered by blinds. A few small LED lamps on his setup glowed in the dark to his right, capturing his attention shortly as he searched the room. Kenma was a barely identifiable ball of shadows on the small bed, half buried in the blanket. His eyes were fixated on Bokuto, blown wide and tracing every single move he made. Kenma? He barely reacted to the name and only pulled the blanket tighter around him. Instinctively, Bokuto slowed down. Under normal circumstances, he would have engulfed the smaller into an embrace already to make up for the missed cuddles, but these circumstances seemed far from normal. I'll turn on the light, okay? He waited and Kenma nodded. A small one, please. He phrased it with the same uncertainty as before, as though he was scared to ask or demand something. It fueled Bokuto's concern, but he bit his tongue, forcing himself to stay calm. Of course. He reached down to turn on a small light in the corner of the room. It emitted an orange, soft glow. Kenma typically preferred it since it wasn't as harsh as the ceiling light and less bright. But even though it was bright enough to expose what the early morning light couldn't reach, covered by fuzzy shadows, Kenma's eyes and nose were red as though he had cried the whole night. The look within the warm gold was fearful. He observed Bokuto closely, backing away as though he was scared of him. The realization hit the ace like a punch in the guts, and he almost winced. His mind was thrown into a frenzy, overflowing with questions. Deep breath, he reminded himself. This is about Kenma. Questions and reasons can wait. Are you scared? If possible, Kenma's eyes grew even wider and glossy, though it didn't seem like he had tears left to cry. No, I'm not. I'm... Hey, it's okay. He made a step forward, but the other flinched away. Immediately he stopped, noticing his mistake. Slowly he stepped back again and retreated, the hand he had instinctively reached out toward him. He slowly sat down on the floor where he stood, hoping it would make him appear safer, less threatening, although he wasn't aware that was even an option. Kenma didn't act like himself today. What I mean is, it's okay. If you're scared, you can tell me. He forced himself to keep his voice leveled and not let the worry seep through. He had seen Kenma in similar states before, but it was rare, and often the blonde resolved it rather quickly and took his distance for a moment. I'm sorry. Please don't be mad. I didn't mean to. It floored the ace. If before felt like a punch in the gut, this was a dizzying hit to the head. He blinked, confused. Of course I'm not mad. Also, what did he think him being mad would mean if he seemed this terrified? Bokuto was sure he didn't want to know that answer. Kenma, I would never be mad at you for that. It's me, Kao. I would never... He drifted off. Something was missing. There was something in his gaze when he said his name, but it wasn't recognition. Do you know who I am? Kenma seemed to want to hide desperately behind the fabric of his blanket, but he slowly managed to shake his head. After everything, Bokuto half expected it, but it still shocked him. More than that, internally he was freaking out. He should probably call the others for help, and an ambulance, but he couldn't bring himself to leave Kenma, small, frightened Kenma, alone or scream and terrify him further. Additionally, his legs felt like jelly and he doubted he'd be able to walk. He took a few more shaky breaths, a constant reminder to stay calm for the other playing on repeat in his head. Okay, then how about I tell you? His head perked up slightly. I'll tell you who I am and why we are here, and then you tell me what you remember. Deal? The small blanket pile nodded hesitantly, and a little relieved that Kenma was willing to talk with him, Bokuto continued. Well, I'm Bokuto Kazoro, though you, well, Keiji, you, and Tetsu usually just call me Ko. We are pretty close, you know? This is our apartment. It's super awesome if you ask me. We all help, but Tetsu designed it for the most part. He's just the best. Keiji made sure it would still be practical. I think my suggestions went a little overboard. A lot. He chuckled sheepishly and scratched his neck. But he also wouldn't let us get a bunch of cat and owl plushies to place everywhere, which is pretty mean in my opinion. I got you one regardless. Slowly, the blonde emerged a bit from his protective blanket nest, and when it fell from his left shoulder, Bokuto recognized the little stuffed animal he was holding in his hands. That one to be precise. You called it apple pie, because that's your favorite food, you know? Kenma looked down at it and pulled it closer. He mumbled the plushie's name under his breath, seemingly content with it, and gave a slight nod. But anyway, I'm drifting off. We knew each other since high school. You played volleyball for Nekama and I played for Fukurudani. I still play, but professionally now, and I'm pretty good at it. He grinned. Bragging is bad. Ken. Bokuto looked distraught and gave his typical puppy eyes to the gamer, who actually smiled. It was tiny and short-lived, but the ace took it as a victory. Well, anyway, I'm the only one of us. You became a gamer. Kuro is... Kuro? You remember Kuro? Hope flickered in his chest as he saw the glint of recognition in Kenma's eyes. He nodded. He helps us with nightmares sometimes. A bright smile spread on Bokuto's face and he nodded encouragingly. Yes, Tetsu's great at that. Oh, I should go get him. Kenma bit his lip nervously, chewing on it as his brows pinched together. What if his mom catches you? I don't want him to get in trouble. Bokuto faltered, his former excitement coming to a sudden halt. Kenma, how old are you right now? 7. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you liked it. If you did, please remember to leave a like on the video because it would help me so much. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss out on more content, for example, the next parts. I plan on uploading the next part on Monday. I hope to see you here for that again. I cannot talk. Tell me what your favorite quote was under the pinned comment and tell me if you want to see more of this. If you like this kind of fanfic heavy topic format, special thanks to my nerdy neckos. You help me so much. I cannot talk right now. It's bad. Here are my other social media. Check them out if you like. Or, even better, check out the other videos in the end card, and don't forget to put your requests in the request form so that I can make videos out of them. Have a great day, bye!
Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you want to be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.